Hello, it's Neil Walters of neilsvideos.com. Welcome to 2023, and the first game we're going to have this year is going to be what's called a meta, which each week in Townstar, for each contest, they change what's called the meta, and they give extra points to certain items, and then they may lower or increase other items, both the points and the dollar values. So the meta this coming up contest for Gala, I think, coin is going to be the rocking horse build. And I put together what I call the bill of materials, or some people would call this a recipe. So this shows you what you need to build. A rocking horse is built in Santa's factory, and you need an iron, an enchanted object, and 4 oak. That sounds easy, right? But the enchanted object, which is made in the Master Wizard, requires 1 mystic matter, 3 peppermint, and 1 molten glass. The molten glass needs to be made in the glass factory and requires 4 silica from the sand mine, 2 chromium from one of your mines, and 1 limestone from one of your mines. The mystical matter, on the other hand, takes 1 glue, which comes from the wizard's workshop, 1 limestone from the mine, 1 cotton yarn from the fabric plant. And I think y'all know probably cotton yarn, if you played before, is cotton, lumber, and energy. And I didn't explain all the mines here. Every mine is going to take like lumber and water drums and energy as well. And then the glue is made from honeycomb and, whoops, that's a typo. That should say honey there, sorry. Honeycomb, and 2 clay lumps. Okay, so that's what you need to build 1 rocking horse. And we'll see how it's going here. So this is my practice town. And I got a mountain because I knew I was going to need several mines. It would have been nice to have a river across, but I like to practice with something that's a little harder than normal. So like if I would have had the river here, it might have been too easy, actually. So before I talk about my town as it is now, let me tell you again how I got here. So I'm going to go through a series of slides that I captured while I was building my town. So I did ask in the Discord, I said, do we know what the cash cow is going to be for the rocking horse build? So even though there are cows in the game, cash cow is a term used in business to basically indicate something that makes you a lot of money. And someone said the silica will be our cash cow. And silica is good because you're going to need silica to make glass anyway. And then someone said that the flour will be 5.5 thousand again. So you might be able to do flour and or silica to get your game started, is what they call the rush. At the beginning of the game, you rush certain items in order to get your town started. Now, if you've been watching my videos on my channel for a while, you know that I have these certain NFTs. And the more NFTs you have, then it makes the game basically easier to play and gives you an advantage. So I have the NFTs for these 2 candy stores, which make candy canes. And therefore, I do sugar and windmills, first of all. So you see, I spread my windmills out here as far as I can. Well, sorry, I should go all the way back to the very, very beginning. So I'm ready to sell sugar. So I got rid of my wheat farm that came here. I moved the rancher houses. I put in these 2 NFTs, which is a big warehouse. And this is the big warehouse in blue. This is the big storehouse in red. They hold 60 items each, which are really, really nice. I went ahead and placed my windmills down here. And I'm using what's called a skin, makes things go faster. But the skins, the Miranda skins, kind of make your windmills look, to me, they look stupid. I'd rather have the wind turbine, I'm sorry. These are called wind turbines. And anyway, so the turbines, you put at least 4 apart, and I built a road there. And they need a constructor house, and the constructor will go grab those and deliver to the warehouse. So, sorry, I'm explaining the basics because you never know when someone's going to tune in for the first time, right? So I sell sugar maybe 1 or 2 times, and that's usually 22,000 each, I think, give or take. And then I had a little bit of cash to play with. I did pick the desert because, again, I wanted the mountain. Well, you can have mountains in other places, but I thought maybe the oil spill would be nice, but it turns out I didn't end up using that at all. But it's actually faster to clear out your city in the desert, too. I used to almost always play forest, but now I think I'm starting to like the desert. Okay, so then I built some trees, because in a forest you have a lot of trees, but in the desert you don't. So you need to build your trees right away. These 3 towers are also NFTs, so that gives me all the water I need to get started. And now I'm building things like extra constructor houses, extra lumberjacks, a couple farmers, and I add more farmers later. And you see my windmills I've spread again now. This is what I was talking about a while ago. You spread them out as, well, almost as far as you can, at least, I think, 4 units apart, or in an L shape, at least 3. And so all of these will be green timers. So each item has a timer, and you want it green. It'll be green, yellow, or red. Other items in the game will put shade on your items, and the shade will slow down a windmill because the windmill is based on wind, right? Did I say that right? Shade, wind, whatever. Yeah, other buildings will block your wind, basically. This is a NFT that I won. It's the Christmas sugar stand that will give 2 sugars to that windmill. I could eventually I put another windmill over here, but then that makes both of them red. So at least at first I wanted them green. And now I'm making here these little, looks like 9 green dots. Those are the peppermints, and the peppermints and the sugar will go into the candy cane factories or the candy stores and make candy canes. The peppermint is not affected by shade, so it's good to put it close to your buildings, where your other crops need to be away from your buildings by about 2 or 3 spots, so that they'll all have green timers, right? Okay, so now what did I do? I came down here and I'm starting to get ready to build what I always call my industrial complex, which is my power plants and your refineries. And I'm also going to start building an iron mine over here. So to build these types of things, you need to have paved roads. So you have to build your dirt roads first. And this is a pattern I like quite often, is I call it a belt line. Like 1 square from the border, I try to build a road around my town. And especially in the desert, that's easy to do and fairly cheap. And so you build that road, and then as you have time and resources, you slowly start to upgrade it to paved roads. So if I put a paved road here, I can put a power plant on one side and an iron mine or whatever mine I want on the other side. That's about it on this screen. The next screen, I maybe could have taken more screenshots, but now you see I have 2 mines, as I said I was going to do. And I actually built a nuclear power plant. That's very tricky. What you have to do is build a steel mill first, and you have to have 5 steel. And I think each steel, it's either 5 or 10 iron ore go into that. So I have two of these guys making iron ore, goes into this warehouse, and then it goes to the steel mill, and it will make steel, and then I can build the nuclear plant eventually. One thing, and some things you only learn by playing. Like, you can watch other people's builds, but you got to get out there and play the game. So I can tell you how to ride a bicycle right, but unless you go and play yourself, you're not going to be a very good player, because you need practice, right? And so that's why most of the good players build these little practice towns just to keep improving their game. And some people plan a lot more than I do. I tend to wing it a lot more, which is not as good, but to me, it's more fun, I guess, and limited time, right? So you can see I'm actually building another power plant right here in between these 2, and that will provide them power. So one thing I learned is if you get rid of a power plant and replace it with a nuclear plant, you oftentimes end up with a big energy shortage. So it might have been smarter to like build the power plant across the street and then build the nuclear plant here later, which I did eventually put a nuclear plant there, but putting the nuclear plant there and taking the power plant out means basically the candy shop stopped while I was doing that, and I had a big electrical shortage. So I had to basically even stop my refinery so I could get enough power to get because it also takes energy to get the nuclear plant built. So that's some of the things you live and learn. This is like a totally different style than what I normally build my industrial plant. So I was just playing around with different ways to do it, and you'll see what I ended up with here in a minute. Then I decided, okay, let's move all the crops, right? So this was not a good place to have the crops long term. It was a good way to get started for my rush. But now I'm putting all my crops over here, and I need a lot more trees now to power the lumber that this lumber mill wants to make. And I'm using all 4 of my NFT water towers. And this is my Tesla coil. I sometimes move it back and forth depending on what I need at the time. Now I built the other windmill over here by the sugar stand. Oh, I actually built my first farm tractors already. So I have 3 farm tractors here, my first logger house. And you'll see shortly I end up, of course, building a lot more logger houses. This is another builder house because sometimes I have the Tesla coil here, and you need that guy to go walk over to the Tesla coil, get the battery, and take it to the nearest warehouse. Oh, one more thing there. I put the storage tank down here. So you see I destroyed the original storage tank because now I was making enough gas already down here. Let's back up. One more thing. The nuclear plant will also provide energy for the mines across the street. So that's another good reason for it. The nuclear plant really only gives you one more energy than a power plant, but it will also produce batteries without having to have crude oil or without having to have one of the, like the haunted East Wing or the oil spill. So normally a power plant to make energy requires 2 crude oils. And if you're a very beginner, you put the oil pumps on your board, and then the oil pumps will make crude oil for your power plant to make batteries. If you have the NFTs, then this haunted wing here will give the crude oil to the power plant. And it also gives crude oil to this refinery here so that it can make petroleum. And the other refinery is, of course, making gasoline from the petroleum. Now, here it says I got my second nuke is finished. My master wizard, I've started building that. Had this, and here I'm reminding myself to tell you, I had to stop other energy eaters, the guys who were eating up my energy, to get the 5 energy to build the nuke building. So like the windmill, the lumber yards, lumber mills here, they used energy. The mines use energy. And so this nuclear plant was just taking forever to get built because it wouldn't get a battery. So there's also oftentimes a fight to get something. So like even if I make batteries down here, and this guy was making batteries, they go into this warehouse, and then like the lumber yards or lumber mills or the mines would grab it first. So you have to think about where and how you place things so that things that are far away can sometimes get the resources they need. And so I was thinking about that for later in my game. I've often had a problem with a fight between, for example, the mines and the bees as to who gets the lumber. So based on where I put my pantry and other things, pantry is where the bees stuff, the honey and the honeycombs go, which is that little brown building. And I put the lumber yards here. So anyway, you'll see how I change that shortly. I now built my first sand mine and my first glass factory to make molten glass, which goes into one of these. And I built my first 2 pottery houses. You need pottery or ceramic bowls in order to collect the honey and the honeycombs. This is my NFT. These little fuzzy things down here, those are like Halloween NFTs. This one gives you nectar. And then this one up here gives me clay for these guys and for this guy on the left. These 2 just have to be placed anywhere on the board, and they double the power of the other 2 NFTs in that collection of 4. You can see I now have a bunch of logger houses, and I have 3 silos. I built my first beekeeper here, which gets the pots from here, and also goes and puts the honey and the honeycomb in the pots, and then puts them in the pantry. I'm going fast because I know a lot of you know all this stuff. Of course, you can just skip over this if you already know it. This diagram I show with red arrows, I think almost everything that I added. Another beehive. I now added oak trees because here's my Santa factory. And to make the actual rocking horses, you need, let's go back to my chart. Is it 4 oak wood? Yeah, see this chart here, you need 4 oak wood, 1 iron, and 1 enchanted object. So you're going to need a lot of oak to make the a rocking horse. And as the game went on, of course, I always do a lot of tuning. I think you have to do a certain amount of tuning to get the right balance between your sugar and your trees and your peppermints. And the honeycomb, honey is always a difficult thing to balance. And by the way, I'm still using my candy cane shops. Okay, let me explain something. They take the meta, they create this new meta, and they say this is what we're going to use like next week in the real game. But they don't implement the meta until sometimes a week or a few days before the real game. So I was practicing rocking horses, but I'm not getting the points that you would get or the same dollars I would get if this was the real game. So that's what I'm saying. This is like an early advanced practice, basically, in advance in time before the actual contest begins. And I don't think I'm going to do it again when they actually give us the meta. So one day they will actually update their tables in their program, and they will redistribute, or they will refresh their program, so that next time you play the game after that refresh, you will now get the new meta, and you will get the features of that meta. But the Santa and all these things were actually been available now for 2 or 3 weeks, so we can actually make the rocking horses now for the last 2 or 3 weeks. You can see here I've also added some water facilities, because you're going to need a lot of water for these mines over here. I now have 3 lumber mills. There's another beekeeper house. You can see my water pumps in there. I moved my refineries over here. That worked out good. Now that I have the 2 nuclear plants, they get full power from those. And so anyway, so during this temporary period where we don't have the extra money coming from the sand mines, or maybe from the flour, I'm still using my candy canes to basically power my cash up here so that I have money to do what I want to do. So when I play the real game, I might end up having a bunch more sand mines, and I might not need my candy canes. That's still to be determined. And if I don't have my candy cane stores here, then I don't need sugar, and I don't need all these windmills. So my final build would be different based on that. But I think I've got enough grasp on how it works now that I can just tune that as I go. I don't need to actually practice a perfect town ahead of time. And again, I'm happy with getting between 200 and 600 place usually. I don't need to be in the top 200. Just that extra time it's worth to me. The extra time it takes to get there, it just isn't worth it to me. I built an extra lumber yard here, and I'm going to build another lumber mill up here in a few minutes. So that pretty much describes that. I now have 2 of everything except the glass factory. 3 more will be challenging. So now see, I have basically 2 of the, I think, epic master wizards, and 2 of the master wizards, and 2 of, I forget what all these things are called. They're confusing to me because they're all kind of like the silly nonsense mystical wizard stuff. Just to recap again, glue is made in the wizard's workshop, and mystic matter is made in the wizard's workshop. And then master wizard is used to make the enchanted objects. So the master wizard is the one that has this, like, kind of, it looks like a balcony to me. It's extra wide around the middle. And then the other ones are kind of like, they have a bigger door at the bottom, like a little entryway. And you see, I basically have 4 of them, but I have these turned sideways for some reason, probably dumb reason. And I think eventually I face them outward so I can use what's called the ghost door concept, which I'm still trying to figure out why that exists. I think they say it's going to go away in the future. So now I have 2 of everything, so I should be able to make a lot of rocking horses. And eventually, of course, I do add a second glass factory, and then eventually you'll see here a 3rd one. So the question is, once you got 2 of everything built, do you have enough crops and beehives to support that? And do you have room? For example, could I have 3 of everything? Could I have 3 making glue, and 3 making whatever this is making, and 3 making mystical objects, and 3 Santa workshops, and etc. 3 of everything. And the question is, do you have room to pack all that in and still have enough crops and lumber guys and all that to do it? So that's the challenge there. So I said, let's take the challenge. So I started adding more pottery shops because it's, I think the bees weren't making enough stuff. Even though sometimes I look over here and I see I have plenty of glue. So no, they only have 1 glue right now. So the glue is coming from the honey and the honeycomb and all that, the clay combined. So I was trying to increase my honey production. And so right now I have 4 more pottery shops. Now, I noticed that when I laid this one down, I wasn't paying attention. And this is, again, what you learn. The glass factory puts off 2 dirty. So you count 1, 2 squares there, and this pottery is dirty because of that. And I think maybe this one was dirty too. So basically that was... So basically that was kind of stupid on my part. So basically I just had to move this thing back 1 down here, and I ended up probably putting the beekeeper there. And then these 2 turned to green timers instead of the yellow timers. And you definitely don't want red timers on your pottery shops. They would take forever. There is, I believe, hidden back here, a water pump. It's hard to see on this screen. So they all get water from the water pump. They're all getting clay from this zone, whatever it is, zone 1 or zone 2. And these guys are also getting clay. So I don't have to have any clay on my board yet. Here I'm building a water pump so I can have another lumber mill right here. I've added some temporary logger houses so I can get more. I'm in a wood shortage kind of for a long time until I get later in the game. So I built more lumber jacks until I had enough wood to build more lumber houses, and until I finally had lumber in my lumber yards, basically. So I had a big lumber issue. So I think at this point, I spend a lot of time tuning. In the next few slides, you'll see some of that. So here we still have the lumber houses. Here's where you see I moved the molten, or the glass factory that makes the molten glass. I added another nuke up here, and that's really, really good because this nuke will power all your, well, maybe not all, but at least most of my potteries. And you'll see I'll have more pottery shops coming soon. And so anything within 4 squares of that, 4 tiles, if you know how to count them, those will get energy from that. Here's that other lumber mill I said I was building. And so see that water pump supported both of those. And then 2 more logger houses. And I moved the pantry down here. And here was another trick I learned that I've seen before, but now it's just clicking with me. I needed a builder house next to the lumber yard, because what would happen is if that builder house wasn't there, that's where the pantry was, then what happens is the lumber will go to your bees and your iron mines and your fabric plants and all that stuff, and it will never get to the items you want to build. So like when I built this guy right here, for example, and it needs, or any of these, if I build a logger house, say up here, it needs 5 wood and 5 lumber. Well, where's it going to get that lumber? So suppose I didn't have this lumber mill, lumber yard there yet. It would have to come all the way down here to get it. So it would have to pick one of the builder houses, and see there's 2, I think I had a 3rd builder house here. So the software would tell one of these builders, okay, you've got to walk down this road. You got to come over here and grab a lumber and then carry it all the way up here to build a logger house. Okay, so what would happen is by the time he would get down here, that lumber might be picked up by the iron mine or the prospector, or it might be picked up by the beekeeper and go to the beehive, right? So he would walk all the way down, or maybe halfway down there, and then the lumber's gone, so he would turn around and walk back. And then a little while later, there's a lumber, so he does the same thing. He starts to walk down there, and then maybe the beekeeper gets it, and now it's gone, and he walks back. And so therefore, you never get your new things built. So I pretty much decided I have to have a builder house right next to my lumber yard if I want to build new things. Okay, maybe even 2 might be a good idea. So that was a big epiphany I had practicing this week. Okay, that's that. Now, this one doesn't look much different, but I did a lot of tuning. So I added 3 more logger houses. I'm still using my candy canes for cash, as I explained earlier, because the new meta is not active yet. I sacrificed the lower right windmill, which is down here in this corner, for more tree space. I built a pond, so I end up having 3 ponds here to make sure everything gets enough water. I spent a lot of time tuning and balancing my trees and my other crops, and then also my mines over here. So I wanted to have these like alternating. So for example, limestone, then chromium, I think then iron, and then limestone, then chromium, and then I think a second limestone. Because if you put, for example, chromium, and then limestone, you're going to end up making more chromium because these guys, again, beat the race to go get the lumber. So the guys that are further away from the lumber yard here don't get the lumber as often and end up not making quite as much of that item. Originally, I had these 2 maze zone items. They don't do anything except double the other items, which is what's important. But they have to be somewhere in my town. I had them down here, but I thought, oh, well, I could put another crops here, or I can put a beehive because that's still within 6. So when they double my nectar, that nectar will reach 6 away, and the beehive needs 3. So I think that was still enough to get to that beehive. And eventually I moved it over again. I put another beehive across the street here. Eventually, I think I ended up with 4 oak farms. I think right now I have 3. And that oak is pretty much going to this lumber yard and then used by the Santa factories. Lots more trees now. So now my trees and my wood is starting to get better. And eventually, I finally got it where I was making enough, actually even more than enough lumber. But it took a long time. So I can't remember if this was at night or not. I think this was. I think this was toward the end of the day. You can see here I'm making about 20 rocking horses per hour. And I don't know, of course, what the other guys are going to be doing. I'm usually not in the top. So if I'm making 20, that means there's some guy out there probably making 40 or 50. And probably several people making 20 to 30, which is why I'm not in the top 200, right? Usually. So that's my current rate. And then I tweak and tune, and you'll see what I do next. Okay. So I added 2 more pottery shops again. Actually, there's 5 here now, and then that's number 6 and number 7. Now, this one is red, and again, I should have known that, but I don't see it all the time. So you waste the time building it, you turn it on, and it's red, and then you realize you wasted your time. So it's getting, I think, one dirty or 2 from these glass factories here, and the refinery is, remember, I think it's a 3, 2, 1. So it's not the refinery, it's the glass factories that are polluting him. So that was not a good place to put a pottery house. This pottery house is okay. It's green, but it needs clay. It's only getting 1 clay from here, so that counts like 3 doubles? I can't remember. Anyway, it's only getting 1. I think it gives you 2, and then it doubles when you have all of them. So it's like 4, 3, 2, 1, right? So that's only getting 1 clay, and therefore I'm going to have to build a clay field so I can harvest clay manually. If I put it on the road here, then it would get the clay, but then it wouldn't get, I think, the full water it needs. So always trade-offs. I've already looked at that. Now we're ready to go back to the live game. See if there's any other comments I can give you there. I started playing from this angle because the buildings are so tall over here, so I put them on the side. That way they're not hiding things as well. And that if I gave my normal angle, which is like this, there's too many things kind of hidden that way, right? So let me fix that again. Now you can see all the logger houses I have. You can see, my goodness, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pottery houses. That's the most pottery houses I've ever had. There's the clay field that provides for the ones that are not close enough to get the clay. This one and this one get water from the water pump here. This one does not get water from the water pump, so it's having to tote in the water drums to get that. I now have 3 glass factories making the molten glass, even though I only have 2 of these. It takes, I think, 2 minutes to make one of these, so I figured while that one's spending its 2.5 minutes, I guess, to make that, the other one can be filling up and getting ready to go. So I think it's worth having the third one in this case. So see, like right now, that one's waiting on a limestone, or it's carrying the limestone, as long as I have enough limestone. This one's, see, totally empty right now, so it's still gathering its stuff. Well, I built one more little mine over here. I didn't have any more room on the left side without getting rid of that windmill, which I could have done. Anyway, I put the shallow mine over here, and it's making chromium. But it's got to go a long way to get its lumber, so I haven't actually watched it very closely to see how well it's doing. But actually, if I look at my lumber yard now, when I let it run overnight, I actually had like an excess of 10 or 20 lumber, which was pretty good. But then this morning, I built some things, and that took the lumber back down temporarily. So I don't think it's had quite enough time to build all the lumber back up. Well, we can take a look at my inventory here in just a second. Let's look at the performance monitor now. See if my rocking horses are up or the same. Right now, Oh my gosh, it's worse. See? I'm down to 11. That makes no sense to me. This is where they talk about less is more and more is less. Sometimes I think I overtune or something. So even though I'm giving you this preview video, you saw earlier where I had maybe 20. Now this performance monitor is a little flaky. Sometimes, you need to let it run for an hour or two to get a good accurate number. And maybe when I showed the 20, maybe that was not quite as accurate as it could have been. So I know there's people that have better scripts for tracking this stuff. You can see, like, I'm still making, like I said, if I got rid of the candy canes, I could speed up other things, I'm sure. Get rid of a lot of my farmers there as well. So you see, I'm still wasting all this time making sugar and sugar cane. See, this is my wood requirement, 2,290 wood per hour. That's a lot of wood. And, oh, you can see lumber there, just a second. Lumber is 443 per hour, and I have 2 in inventory right now. See, I still have maybe 3 or 4 unused spots that if I spent more time, I might be able to do something useful with them. Like I could put a peppermint here, but I think I have more than enough peppermint right now, usually in the silos. 15 sugar cane, 4 cotton, and well, right now I don't have peppermint. Most of the times I've looked, there's always been an abundance of peppermint. So it kind of makes me wonder what else has been going on here that I haven't seen. This is one of those overnight times I made a mistake and my cotton yarn filled up the warehouses and my honey filled up. So here in my pantry, I had 20 honey, which again, that basically stopped all my production because if it made a honeycomb, it was throwing away on the street because this was full. So I didn't have an auto sell on honey because the prior day, I almost never had more than 1 or 2 honey like I do right now. So something got a little off during the night and I ended up with 20 honey and that really messed up my production. But then what you do on the production monitor, you just do the reset, right? So I did reset it and the game actually froze and I had to reboot it. So this is since the reboot of the browser. And again, right now, my rocking horses are only 10 or 11 per hour. Oh, you can see that's probably one of my issues. My frames, oh, there it went back up. Frames per second, if that gets down to like 6 like it was a minute ago, that's really bad. But when I close my remote desktop and run this on my other laptop, or run this on the same laptop in a different way, see the FPS went down again. That could be killing me. I'll see what my production rate is on that other machine when I'm not using remote desktop. And we'll see how much better things get. I will just show you a couple of these buildings. If you just look at them right now, let's see what they're waiting on. So see, Santa Factory number 1 is making a rocking horse right now. And this one is waiting on an enchanted object. So we can go over here and see how that's coming. On this one, it's waiting on 1 peppermint. So now it seems like actually peppermint is my issue at the moment. This one is waiting on 3 peppermint. So somehow I ended up with the peppermint crisis, it looks like. Hey, your crises sometimes just move from one thing to the other. This guy he's waiting on limestone, and it's hard to get that because you have 3 or 4 things using limestone, like your glass plants. This one's waiting on honey and honeycomb, but probably on the way because you can see here, well, usually there's 1 or 2 honeycombs in there. This one is waiting on honey as a honeycomb. This one is waiting on limestone. So let's take a look at my inventory here, see if I got too much or too little of what. Ooh, okay, that's right. I don't know why that's not auto-selling. That's probably why I don't have enough peppermint. Maybe I need to lower this auto-sell down to, say, maybe 12 or 15, just say 14. If the silos are full, then the peppermint can't fit in there. Got auto-sell in the batteries. I got auto-sell, most of these things. There's my oak I almost have too much oak, but if I have 3, I think it wasn't enough. Plenty of water right now. Mystical Matter is 15. That's a little high. My auto sell on that one. I could. Maybe my warehouses are fuller than they should be. Where are you, Mystical Matter? We're looking the way down. There's my glue. I don't have any keepers on the glue. Usually I keep 4 of those because I've got the wizards that might need it. This roll could be improved a little bit. Enhanced object. I've got a cell of 6 on that one. That's the one that looks like a dot. That's not the Mystical Matter. Mystical Matter, I have 10. Okay. I could probably lower that to maybe 6 or 8 or something like that. Let's go with 6. This is my chromium. So actually I have plenty of chromium. This is my limestone. So it looks like we have plenty of that. This is my molten glass. So you can see having those 3 glass factories seems like I always have enough molten glass. Clay, of course, makes too much and you have to auto sell it. It's my iron, my candy canes, honeycomb, rocking horse, pottery, cotton yarn's a little low actually. Lumber could be better. This is my glue and my sugar. So that gives you a pretty good rundown of where I'm at right now. Again, this is not meant to be a model town by any means. It was my practice town, but if I can get those numbers up a little, I might build my final town just like this. Who knows? Because it seems, most of it seems to be pretty good, I think, as far as things that are getting water that need to and energy and so on. So this has been Neil Walters of Neil's Videos. Hope that was useful. I always think I'm going to make like a 12-15 minute video, but I just start rambling, I guess, and teaching. And I hope this teaches you what you wanted to know about rocking horses in Town Star from Gala Games. See you in the next video.